Today, the lenders who are making it easier to get a loan. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news. Well, following the RBA's lift to the cash rate to 4.1%, it's clear that many more households are getting into difficulty. Some, indeed, are trapped. What's been called a mortgage prison. Now, according to CanStar, the good news is that some lenders are now making it easier for borrowers to get their loans approved by lowering the financial stress tests that borrowers need to meet, considering things like overtime income and also excluding some living expenses and waiving notional rent for would-be buyers living rent-free with their parents. The number of lenders that have made changes to their policies have definitely lifted, and this means that there's now perhaps more people who can switch. But the question is, are lenders taking on additional risk by doing this, or are they actually trying to help? Well, I'll leave you to judge that. But here are some of the things that they have done. Firstly, they've lowered the stress test. When assessing loan applications, lenders need to place a serviceability buffer on top of any advertised interest rate. APRA sets the serviceability buffer and it's currently at 3%. So, if you applied for a loan with an advertised rate of, say, 6%, the lender would need to be satisfied that you'll be able to meet repayments if the rate was 9%. But as CanStar says, this very regulation, which was designed to protect consumers, could be working against them in some situations. It has made it harder for some to refinance to a lower rate, resulting in them being stuck in a mortgage prison. This has been something which I've been talking about for a long time, and others too, of course. But here are a few examples. Non-bank lender Resimac reduced its serviceability assessment buffer to 2% for all of its products. And Westpac and its subsidiaries, including St George, Bank of Melbourne and Bank SA, will now allow some borrowers who refinance their home loans to be tested under a modified serviceability assessment rate if they don't pass the standard test. To be eligible, customers need to have a credit score of 650 or more, have a good track record of paying down all existing debts in the past 12 months, and the new repayments must be lower than those on their current loan. The second thing that's changed is the treatment of overtime income. Overtime and allowances aren't always taken into account when lenders assess loan applications. If you're paid overtime regularly and substantial, lenders will typically only take, say, 80% of your overtime pay into account when assessing your loan application, CanStar said. Some lenders, however, have recognised that essential workers such as paramedics, police, firefighters and nurses earn a large chunk of their income from overtime, penalties and allowances, and so now will take 100% of their overtime into account. And Westpac, Bank West, Bank of Queensland and Macquarie Bank are some of the lenders that allow emergency service employees to have 100% of their overtime and allowances assessed as part of their home loan application. And the latest lender to jump on board here was UBank. And there are some other assessment changes too. If you're self-employed, for example, you generally need to show 2 years of tax returns or financial statements, but Bank West are now accepting 1 year's worth of financials. If you have a child or children in private schools, the fees can be counted as part of your living expenses, which can potentially reduce how much you can borrow. If an applicant has sufficient savings to cover private school fees, however, Macquarie Bank will allow those to be excluded from their living expenses. And generally for applicants who live rent-free with parents, Macquarie Bank factors in a notional rent of around $650 a month, which severely impacts their borrowing capacity. But Macquarie will waive that notional rent for singles with no dependents if they supply a letter from their parents confirming they're living there rent-free. This is particularly helpful for borrowers who will remain living at home and rent out their property that they're looking to buy. And of course, this is on top of the other trick, which is that lenders are extending the loan over a longer period of time, in some cases up to 40 years. And of course, that means that you pay a little less each month, but pay much more interest over the life of the loan. And the other one that they're actually doing is also switching some people's to interest only. Still, I have seen a few examples recently where people have moved from a principal and interest fixed rate loan onto an interest only variable rate loan. Interest only, of course, means you're only paying interest on the interest, as it were. And what that means is that ultimately you still have to pay the capital back later. And of course, there is one other trick, and that is that when people are refinancing, many lenders are allowing them to draw down additional equity sufficient to cover the interest payments. And there's one other trick that many lenders are using, and that is that people are being allowed to draw down equity when they refinance sufficient to cover the payments over the next year or two. So essentially, lenders are encouraging people to go further into debt to support the health of their mortgage in the short term. And I'll leave you to judge whether that's a good strategy or not. So there are things here that are a bit concerning insofar that whilst the lenders will be able to say, well, you're going to be okay, and we don't need to actually flag you as a problem borrower, the truth is that you're putting more pressure on the system. And if rates continue to rise, and it looks as if they probably will, this could definitely be stacking up problems for later. So it's always important, I think, to do your homework if you're thinking of refinancing and making sure that whilst the headline offer might be better, the question is it really good for you? Now, if you're buying your home in Sydney's contentious market, you don't need to stand alone. This is the time you need to have Edwin Almeida from Ribbon Property Consultants standing alongside you. Buying a property is both challenging and adversarial. The vendor has a professional on their side. Emotions run high, price discovery and price transparency are hard to find, and then there's the wasted time and financial investments that you make. Edwin understands your needs, so why not engage a licensed professional to stand alongside you? With RPC, you know you have experience, knowledge, and master negotiators looking after your best interests. So shoot Ribbon an email at info@ribbonproperty.com.au, and if you use the promo code DFAWTW/Martin, you can get a 10% discount offer. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.